Wow. Ryan just got me all jacked up. Eating a piece of jackfruit over there. Okay. So, our next presenter was a gentleman that grafted and donated the Kahalu'u avocado tree for Haiku Elementary. Shared with us his grafting expertise. As a matter of fact, I took his grafting class. Whenever he holds this class, highly recommended, folks. It's a wonderful day. Brought my whole family there. We learned how to graft. Well, he taught us how to graft. Practice. So, at any event, though, it's been. He also taught us how to air layer. So tonight he's going to talk about mulching. So Mulching 101. Please give it up for Jayanti Nan.
Aloha, everyone. I see a show of hands. How many people mulch? How many people use mulch? Wow. All right. So we all know a little something about mulch already. Mulch, in my experience, is really the key to healthy soil and therefore healthy plants. So mulch basically is any layer applied to the surface of an area of soil. And its purpose is to conserve moisture, improve the fertility and the health of the soil, to reduce weed growth, and enhance the visual appeal of an area. What can we use for mulch? Lots of things we can use for mulch. And my favorite is wood chips. You can use grass clippings, any kind of yard waste, branches, palm fronds, leaves, anything that comes from plants or animals, and even living ground covers are considered mulch. So, a lot of people will actually take mulch and haul it away to the dump, which I think is actually really sad because, one, it takes a lot of energy, and two, it's way better for the land to actually use the mulch and let it decay on site. So this is an example of just kind of beginning to use the mulch that's available in any given area. And this is mulch that came from the coconut tree, and we actually used some cardboard underneath the palm fronds and coconuts to kill the grass. So again, making use of what's available. This is a client of mine in Pukalani. Oh, I did a small orchard installation, and he had piles of sticks and fronds and different items of mulch that he'd been collecting and didn't really know what to do with. So, as you can see here, this pile here on the left side of that picture is the orchard that I planted. On the right side is the other half of the yard that we didn't plant. That's what it used to look like. So the pile of mulch at the bottom is not only serving as a long-term sort of compost pile that then the trees and plants will be able to access, but if any flooding were to happen here, the mulch pile would act as a catchment to slow the water down and catch any soil or mulch particles that are flowing down the hill. So you can see in the front here, this is what the yard looked like before I went in there and did my planting. And we used, I used cardboard over the grass to kill the grass, and then wood chips, and then anything else the guy had that was organic matter. Again, palm fronds, sticks, leaves, branches, all of it, and had really great success. So this is what the orchard looks like after 8 months, and I'm all about diversity, and So what you can see in these pictures, papaya is a fig tree, comfrey, spineless panini, pigeon pea, sweet potato, amaranth, and pumpkins. And just to give you a little idea, like this fig tree here was literally a foot tall when I planted it. So we're seeing incredible growth in just bone dry Pukalani conditions. And honestly, I really attribute it to the mulch. A lot of people say I have a green thumb, but really the mulch is amazing as far as holding in the moisture and building fertility. This is the front of that same client's house, and this is a lilacoid trellis that I put up for a privacy screen. And the slope below the trellis, we mulched heavily as well as planted. And the mulch is amazing just in itself for erosion control. What happens is the fungus, the mycelium of the fungus, grows into the mulch, but also into the soil, creating a web that holds the mulch and the soil together. So just in itself, it's an amazing erosion control agent. And then we added a bunch of plants that also help with erosion control. And this is the pictures of the trellis about 5 months after we planted it. It's getting pretty covered, some big, beautiful lilacoids on it, and you can see some of the green on that slope that we'd mulched there, pigeon peas and papayas and things coming up. And the weeding is so minimal. When you use mulch properly, the right amount of mulch, there's almost no weeding. And the weeding that is there is really easy because all the weeds are growing into the soft mulch. So in all the year, I've been farming here on Maui for about 18 years, and in that 18 years, I've had a lot of amazing teachers and mentors, and fortunately, all of them were either organic or biodynamic, and so I had a lot of great exposure to, mulch and, using organic matter. And so getting creative with what we have as our resources on any given property or farm is really the name of the game, because ultimately everything we need, we can grow right here. We just need to figure out how to use it properly. So these are some pictures of my home garden, and the soil's really good here already, but without mulch, honestly, I don't think it'd be looking half this good. And I'm really proud of my garden here. Some beautiful, yummy vegetables, holy vegetables. So in my garden, I've been using grass mulch, which I collect just from around my home, and that has always worked great. When I first learned about mulch in the garden, I was told to stay away from wood chips, and so it's always been grass clippings or hay or straw. And I watched this movie called Back to Eden. I highly recommend anyone who's interested in mulching or farming, please watch this movie. You can Google it online. It's free. You can stream it online. Back to Eden. And so now I'm using wood chips in my garden, and it's working great. So mulch is also good in the nursery. You can see here I've got some little mango popping up there, and my nursery is all organic. I don't use chemical fertilizers or any kind of sprays. So the mulch is actually really important for me to, particularly as like a slow release fertilizer, because that's one thing with organics, especially in the nursery, is like you're looking for that like fertilizer that's going to be releasing slowly over time. So, and as of course I have a weed suppressor. Life without mulch. Oh. It's actually really sad. There's a lot of people I'm actually really surprised at how few people actually really use mulch, especially like the big time farmers. Which I really hope we see more and more, farmers getting into mulch. I told my mom one time, I was trying to explain to her what it's like. I was like, imagine taking off all your clothes and laying out in the sun all day long. Okay, that's how the soil feels. It's not fun. It's hot. So all the life in the soil, they want to be covered up. They want to be shaded and cool and moist. So when you don't have soil, the life, or when you don't have mulch, the life in the soil suffers, and therefore the life in the soil is what makes healthy soil. So commercial agriculture, this is a farm I visited up in Kula, particularly so I could get some photos for you guys for this presentation. But this is the reality of a lot of farming these days, is the chemical fertilizers and herbicides, at least people think that they're needed to offset the cost of not using mulch and proper farming, because if your sun's just baking, or if your soil's baking in the sun, your fertility's getting lost, your soil's not healthy, the pests are going to come in, and you need these like super strong fertilizers to make your plants grow, which kills your soils even further. So it's just an endless cycle of killing and eroding the soil, which is sad. And then of course there's the weed issue. You got all these crops out there, and you're essentially like feeding and watering the soil and creating an environment that ultimately makes the weeds flourish. And so you get, like this is beets, but you can barely see them because of the weeds, and in the taro there's just tons of weeds, and you just don't have those problems when you're really embracing mulch. So, I'm 33 years old. I started farming when I was 15 here on Maui, and when I started, there wasn't a lot of people my age that were into it, and I actually got teased as a kid for being a gardener and being into plants. But what I see a lot is young people, they have this idea of what farming is, and it's just really hard, and it's just miserable. Like, people just think it's miserable work. And if you have this kind of agriculture, that's kind of true. It's miserable. You're out there weeding, and it's just horrible. And so farming with mulch. Hello. Wow, no weeds. And healthy plants. So look at these beets. It's just growing food as nature intended. I mean, what we're doing really is trying to mimic nature. In nature, with the exception of, when a pig, roots up the ground, or you have a natural disaster, you almost will never see exposed soil in nature. It just doesn't happen. Nature's constantly covering the soil up. Okay, so what we're trying to do is just mimic the cycles of nature, and covering the soil up is what nature does. So we're getting these amazing results here with this mulching, and with the wood chip mulch is fairly new for me, and for this farmer too, and there's a learning curve. One of the reasons why I was originally told don't use wood chips in your garden is because they'll take too much nitrogen to break down. That's the one. So in the movie Back to Eden, they address that, and what they're saying, and what I'm experiencing too, is that only happens when you mix the wood chips into the soil. When you put the mulch on top of the soil where it belongs, that's not the case. Okay, so if you have a particularly nitrogen deficient soil to begin with, it could temporarily bind up some nitrogen. So you need to have a healthy soil when you start mulching, if it's a new thing. But eventually what you're going to get is you're going to get just massive surpluses of fertility, and every single year, you'll be growing your crops, while the soil is getting better. So every year you're building soil and more fertility every year while you're growing your crops. So that's the story with the nitrogen. And then, you know, of course, to till or not to till, like that's the other thing with, you know, farming with mulch. What do you do when you change your crops? Are you going to like scrape all the wood chips or whatever kind of mulch you're using off to till? I say no. I'm actually going for the no-till approach. And you know, what if we hired our worms to till for us, and all we gotta do is pay them with mulch? They work for mulch. Okay, I mean the whole reason for tilling really is to aerate the soil to prepare it for the next crop. What if that was all being done all the time, fertilizer included? So I mean, this is just, it's a really different way of thinking about farming and growing food, and there's a learning curve. So it's pretty major. Trees without mulch. This is an orchard I saw get planted in Kula, and I'm always driving around paying attention to what people are doing and what they're planting and how they're doing it and what the results are. And so this is probably about a year after it was planted, and I did notice that they didn't mulch, and pretty much not one of the trees is doing well, and a lot of them actually died. And then, of course, there could be a lot of different reasons for that, but I'm very confident that if they had mulched, it would have helped tremendously. So this is actually a couple hundred yards away on a different farm, and these trees were mulched right after they got planted with horse manure, and they're doing fantastic. Giant figs and healthy new growth, and it's so important to get the trees off to a good start when they're young. Apples in Kula, it's just blowing my mind how much diversity we can grow here on the island. I mean, from walnuts to pecans, almonds and peaches and apples, you know, right down to durians, and just I mean, it's incredible. This island that we have here is amazing. And yeah, we need to grow farmers. There's a lot of land here on Maui and not a whole lot of farmers comparatively. So we're growing farmers. And another, you know, thing about the getting creative is like, you know, you see this pile of logs and stuff. It's like just stuff that got bulldozed into a pile because, I mean, I'm assuming that they just didn't know what else to do with it. But this is a valuable resource, not only as a mulch, but as a potential erosion control agent. If you stack up the logs along contour, they'll help catch soil as it washes down the hill. While building the soil and shading the soil and preventing weeds. And this is the beginning of my home agroforestry system. And what I'm doing here is I'm just removing the grass, and I'm using every single bit of mulch that is coming out of the area back on the area, as well as bringing in like I brought in a couple truckloads of palm waste from one of my jobs that I did, and I just like, it's almost like you can't have enough mulch, especially if you're in a dry area. Like the mulch can go on really thick. I'm going, you know, like a foot thick with this mulch, and you know, like my weeding is almost non-existent, you know, pretty minor weeding, and the fertility, like the soil, it's like every day, it's like every time I water, it's like compost tea going into the soil, and the worm population is coming up, and it's amazing. So, sort of non-organic mulches for landscaping, I just wanted to go into it because they are mulches, and the reason why I didn't add them into the farming landscaping part, or the farming mulch part, is because these mulches don't actually improve the soil or fertility, and therefore you wouldn't necessarily want to use them for farming, because that's what we're looking for in farming, is healthy soil and constantly building, you know, regenerative agriculture. At least I am. So red, black cinder, recycled glass, gravel, rubber chunks, rocks, weed stop. And then of course for landscaping you can also use all the other kinds of mulches. Here's some examples with the red cinder, some gravel, some smooth rocks. Again, they're not going to be improving the soil or adding to the fertility, but they will slow the erosion and hold in some moisture. And I also really wanted to talk about weed stop because I see weed stop being used all over the island. And it's actually really sad to me because, in my opinion, it's really misused a lot. In this case, it's pretty much being used as a mulch, and what it does is, because it's black, it heats up in the sun. It's really degrading to the actual life in the soil. It's not good for the soil, and it's actually going to potentially promote erosion. I saw one slope that was covered in this, and so it stopped anything from growing on the slope, and then when it rained, all the water was flowing underneath it because there was nothing holding the soil. It just, all the soil was washing out underneath it. And I've seen, clients, they'll put it around fruit trees to stop the weeds. And it will stop the weeds that are underneath it, but weeds will just grow right on top of it and root into it. And then it's just like, okay, now you've got this layer of plastic, it's just, so it's really misused a lot. This is one use that I've seen that was actually a really nice thing to do with weed stop. And that was, in this orchard system, they were using it to kill the grass, but then they would peel it back slowly to plant perennial peanut, and they would also add mulch. So it was more of a temporary way to kill the grass towards a more sustainable means in the end. So other ways and materials. Here I did a job out in Kipahulu when we were planting this hillside, and it was covered with grass and buttonweed. And we used cardboard and cotton sheets to kill the grass and the buttonweed and cover it up with wood chips. And the reason why I used cotton sheets was because of the slope, and it would have been really difficult to put cardboard all over it because it would have slipped down. It would have been really hard to get the cardboard to stay. So with the cotton sheets, we were easily able to sort of nail them down, and you can see we wet them to keep them in place while we were putting them down, and we covered them with wood chips, and the weeds and grass were totally gone. And it turned out really, really nice, really beautiful. There was almost no weeding after what we did. So thanks for listening, and happy mulching. If you guys have any questions, we have a few minutes.
Once you're into mulching and you got like food or mulch or whatever, can you still plant? How do you plant like small new veggies or whatever you want to plant?
Okay, so depending on what kind of mulch you're using, that really wants to depict how thick your mulch is. So if you have like light, fluffy mulch, like leaves or grass or something that's really airy, then you can go thicker. If you have like wood chips, 4 to 6 inches should be plenty. And then as far as planting into that, you just, make a little hole, or you make a little furrow into it so you can actually plant into the soil. Yeah. Yes, bamboo leaves make excellent mulch. They're really high in silica. Very good mulch.
I was just wondering about mosquitoes and haiku with all that, like palm fronds and things.
So she's wondering about mosquitoes and haiku and the palm fronds and whatnot. Yeah, so that's a great question. There are certain types of mulch, especially like coconuts cut in half, or things like that, or the flower thing from the coconut. Those can hold mulch. So what you can do to fix that is cut your coconuts in quarters. Flip your palm fronds over so they're not holding water, or cut them up, chop them up, or even shred them. If you have some sort of chipper, that can alleviate that, or just make it so that they're not going to hold water.
There's mosquitoes in haiku?
Are there affordable chippers?
There are, yeah, pretty affordable small chippers for like the homeowner, for sure.
You got to make sure with chippers that you get one that has lubricating bearings, that you can lubricate the bearings. Otherwise, it's a mess, man.
Yeah. The DR is very nice. I've had a DR for years.
What kind?
DR chipper. They come out of New England. And they've got a lubricated bearing.
Where do you get one here?
Well, I shipped it in.
DR chippers.
I think it might be good to mention that when you mulch trees, the mulch shouldn't touch the tree, right?
Yeah, good, thank you. So she's mentioning when you're mulching fruit trees, to not mulch up against the trunk. So you want to keep at least 2 to 4 inches clear from the actual trunk of a tree, clear of any mulch. You can, I like to put like an inch of mulch kind of right up to the trunk just to stop any weeds. But you want to go really light when you get up to the trunk. And
One more.
okay, one more question. Where do you get worms? Fence has got worms. But no, actually, you can find worms anywhere. Usually, if you just go out into the forest or in somebody's lawn where there's some kind of mulch, there's pretty much worms everywhere. All right, thank you so much.
I'm a mulch head from way back too. As you can see, you need mulch, right? I'm doing a little experiment and it's working out really great. Since our business is in our baby greens, when we harvest the trays, when we cut the wheatgrass, I'm taking those mats and I'm laying down some worm castings, and then I'm flipping the mat on top of the worm castings. And that's really getting great results. So I got this whole carpet of flats around the plants. So that's a neat experiment to do, and then you can get whatever you're growing benefit too, right? But the one thing that Jayanti was touching on around where the mulch meets the soil, and he was saying how you grow your soil. Well, what happens there is just like in a forest soil, when you pull back the litter on the forest soil and there's all that life going on, well, what happens is that all those microorganisms are living and dying where that meets. Right? So whenever they die, it gives up 10% free nitrogen, their extracellular structure. It gives up all this free nitrogen. That's why you saw his plants were so green. That's where all that nitrogen's coming from. So good job, brother. I love it. Mahalo. When he said he wanted to do mulch, I was all about it. And 33, oh my God. Bill, we're getting a little too old, man. 33 this brother over here.
When he said it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do the drawing. Yeah.